On this episode of Rock School Proprietor Podcast, we're going deep into building culture in lesson studios and how that can significantly improve retention. My friend and fellow Rock School proprietor, Tyler Marolf, founder of Rios Rock School, joins me on this episode. Stay tuned. Welcome to Rock School Proprietor Podcast. My name's John Kazicki, and my guest today is founder of Los Rios Rock School, co-founder of Teacher Zone studio management software with his partner Chris Bates, who we've spoken with on podcast. He's a guitarist, a vocalist, a father. Tyler Marolf, how are you doing today?
Nice intro, John. You're solid, man.
Thank you. Thank you,
I'm
sir.
great. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. It's great to see you and to catch up. It's been a while since we've talked.
Yep.
So I want to really dig into rock school stuff today. I want to dig into culture. But I wanted to also share with you some of my first impressions of first meeting you online in the groups online years and years ago. When I first saw what you were doing with Los Rios, I kind of had this mix of emotions, right? Kind of part like, man, he's doing exactly what I've always wanted to do. And until that point, I hadn't seen a lot of people doing rock schools in the way that Los Rios does them. And in the way that I envisioned what I wanted to do and was pursuing with Michigan Rock School. So it was like, a little bit of jealousy there, but also
that's healthy. I've had the same feelings before with other businesses, and it's a good.
Yeah. So a little bit of like a jealousy, a little bit of like envy, a little bit like, man, I got to meet this guy. I got to become friends with this guy. Because what it also did was to see what you had been doing with Los Rios sort of validated these things that I'd been thinking in my head. Like I could do this project, I could do that with the students. And that was really what I wanted to push for with Michigan Rock School. So it was a bit of a motivator. So for that, I owe you a debt of gratitude, whether you know it or not.
Well, that's flattering, but you're quite the guy yourself, man. You were just waiting to explode.
Well, thank you. But to bring it around to the topic, so much of that, regardless of what you're doing with the bands and the students and the performances, I strongly believe that a lot of it has to do with the culture that you create within your studio.
What
do you think?
100% agree. I 100% agree.
In the early days of Los Rios Rock School, was creating that culture a plan, or was that something that was a byproduct that you saw sort of materialize from working with students?
So now that I've had 15 years to think about it, which, when we first met, I knew a lot of things because I built them and they worked and I had proof of concept.
Yeah.
So I knew a certain matrix of things that worked. What I didn't know, and I even knew why it was working, but I thought it was based off of kind of reaction to teaching kids and getting results. And then I thought it was growing from 2009 on when we started, right?
Okay.
The culture started a long time before that. So all the way up prior to my adolescence.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that, and I've talked about it in podcasts. But what I didn't realize is that, it happened organically because it was me.
Yeah.
Los Rios Rock School and the founder standards are me put into a way to impact people, and it happens to be using music.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to teach that because my life circumstances molded me into who I was to become.
Yeah.
So a lot of that growth that happened when I started to meet those kids. Now, was I this selfless guy completely when I started it? No, I was trying to write a second album. I had a first album. It was a lot of fun. Got some placements on television shows, and I hadn't started the rock school yet. Unemployment was going to run out, and I wanted to start teaching kids with my studio and teach them only what I knew and try to write a second album. Well, from my mortgage history, and I was, pretty high up in the mortgage industry for 11 years, and I learned a lot. I knew how to make a business plan. I knew how to make proposals. I knew how to forecast numbers at least in a basic format and come up with a plan. So I made a website and whatever and did those basic things you need to have that storefront ready to go. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But what I didn't know is when I got Mary LeBlanc as my first student, I didn't know it was going to channel all of what I had been through in a pure and raw way to know how important those kids were. From the first student number one, the culture started. And that was me listening to them. I wanted to know them. I wanted to know what songs make them tick. And if they didn't know one at the time, Mary had a million. She's just a genius. I lucked out with my first student. Let's just put it that way. And she is now the president's own percussionist in the Marine Corps band. She's a captain after she got her master's at Juilliard. That is just that's a lottery ticket. To have that be your first student, I mean, come on, like whatever. Could I have still done it with my other kids? Yes, I could have. But back then, YouTube wasn't like throttled on Facebook, and all the videos I put up on YouTube were seen by everybody. And then we got to our first 50 students overnight. That part, whatever. But each kid I started to build the culture upon because every kid had different needs. Some of them, they got their tuition. Back then it was only $220, right? And one kid had 4 people paying for theirs. Someone from church, they came from nothing. And then Mary had a lot. And then some kids had a lot and some kids but what I noticed is there was no difference in the fact that they needed a third party person that they could trust. That's all. And I knew I couldn't mess that up. And in the very beginning, I knew that no matter how hard my day was going or whatever, that was not, they would know. They would know. They're smart. I knew not to patronize them. I don't care if they were 7 or 8 years old. I knew if I talked down or talked in a little kid style kindergarten teacher voice or something like that, that is not, that would be disrespectful to those kids. So all of a sudden, if a kid could play a drum beat that I taught him in 20 minutes and then I could start playing a riff and then I record it and I'm like, hey, can I record this? I just accidentally wrote a riff while you were drumming. I'm going to record something I might record later. Then they became my peers. So this rock school, I don't even call it a rock school anymore. We're like Berkeley and Thornton, just 6 to 17 years old. That's what we are. It says rock school in our name. I didn't know what else to call it. Los Rios Rock School. Who knows how many students we didn't get because it said rock school.
Sure.
It's always been that I wonder, right? But whatever, we're branded now and that's what it is. It is an academy of places that the kids are helping us steer the ship. They are involved. Their story is, and I didn't know this at the time until I learned story brand marketing like 7 years later, but I was letting their story. They were the heroes. They were the heroes, not me. Never once did I say, hey, kids, stick with me for a while and you might get somewhere. Like we were the antithesis of that. And then I started looking at the places around that taught music. And I was, and remember when I said I wasn't completely selfless, I never wrote the album, by the way. It never happened. The freaking school blew up. But what I did do is I started to get a fire under my butt that every time I raised the bar with the kid, they would start to meet it. They would just, so it was like a mad scientist. So I was like, how high can we go?
Right.
And then at that point, we started to build the culture. Then we had to start putting standards in place because that's still sort of shooting from the hip, experimenting, whatever. And then what ended up happening was we were able to refine the process of what I've just described and sort of put it into a system because it wasn't a lot of things that we were repeating. I just had to identify what things were we repeating that was working. And then those standards from me, kindness, work ethic, willingness. Like we do those tours so the parents can see the kids. And if the kids' ears aren't perking up on the tours, I tell the parents on the phone, try again a year from now.
Mm-hmm.
Don't come in and make my rosters unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
They need to be all in, and it needs to be their decision, not yours. So that also helped grow it. That helped grow it bigger when they were going to different teachers later and stuff. But that standard is they had to go through the standard filter. The founder's standards were there.
I want to go back to something that I think is incredibly important to highlight, and something that you said you did early on with these kids. And this is something that I recognized when I started teaching also. And you phrased it a little bit differently. I'll use the terminology that I always talk about, which is when a kid comes in for music lessons, I looked at all the kids, and I realized, like, and this is me as, I think I started teaching in my mid to late 20s or something like that, right?
Okay.
So I noticed that, and I didn't have kids myself, right? I have an older brother, I have a younger sister, but I'm in my 20s. I'm pretty self-centered. But I recognize that, like, when kids come into music lessons, they are so conditioned to being told what to do in every aspect of their lives, whether it's at home by their parents or whether it's at school by their teachers. They're just conditioned that when they come into a music lesson, they assume that this older adult that they're sitting with is going to tell them what to do, and they're going to talk to them like they're a kid.
Right.
And I didn't want that, because I don't think that's what music is about. And I don't think that's what creativity is about. So I did the same thing that you said you did. I just talked to them.
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Hey, what'd you do today?"
Right.
And if they said, "Oh, I don't know, I went to school," I'm like, well, that's the answer you give to your parents. That's the answer you give to your uncle or whatever. What do you like to do? Do you play video games? Do you play sports? Just like you said, you become a peer, not just another authority figure in their lives, but you become someone that they feel like they can talk to, because then you build that trust with them. And when they trust you and they don't think that you're just another adult telling them what to do, well, then you have this organic relationship that's going to build over time. And, I'm kind of putting two and two together now myself about, like, well, yeah, exactly. That is where that culture comes from. It's that tiny little seed that you plant with every one of those students.
Yep, I agree. I want to let you know that my wife and I decided during my band days, of course, while you're playing and all completely self-absorbed, trying to get 40 new people to your every single show, and and 100 shows in 18 months and the whole thing. Of course, it takes a certain drive and that entrepreneur insanity to get there. So it's a lot of selfishness. I'm just going to call it. And then we're not going to have kids. And Mary and a few of the other first kids, we looked at each other. I'm like, we need some of those. And that literally motivated us to have our first son. And so when the rock school was maybe 2 years, a little less than 2 years old, Raylan was born.
Okay.
So I was like you. And people were like, "Oh, you're so good with the kids." And I was giving parents advice and stuff. It was crazy. And then I had my kid, and I'm like, why am I not taking my own advice? Because being a parent's crazy. That's a whole nother dynamic that you have to deal with. The behavior patterns of parents.
Right.
because of what you just mentioned. They're conditioned by them. And the parents, you've got the ones that are super helicopter style at first, and you've got to let them know that, trust us, it's going to work. Just give it a few months. And then you've got the ones that are like totally like us already. They're like, we just want them to decide. But then on that side, they don't want to over push them. So then you've got to push them and let them know that, parents, if they're not practicing at home, I can't do my job the best that I can. I need your help. I can teach them and coach them how to practice. But if they're not, eventually they're going to have to work their way out of the program. And that's okay. It's not a negative thing. It's not a threat. But our program requires them to get better. And they need to hear it themselves that they're getting better. And then it sticks. And so the having kids, they inspired me to have kids. I don't know about you.
So I was... It's hard to say. Like, I haven't really unpackaged that, but it is a wild dynamic having kids and then also being surrounded by kids in your work environment. It's very strange. I want to talk about, you just had the show at Los Rios and you were there, and we just had our big end of session concert this past weekend. And before the show, I was kind of hanging out, just watching, just observing.
Right.
Just observing how the kids interact before the show, how the parents interact before the show. And it's just like any other concert, right? If you go to a concert, you see just people casually chatting and bonding over the music and generally just having a good time.
Right.
And I thought about the piano recital that I did when I was a little kid, and how it was nothing like that.
Right.
And what do you think that is? There's like this weird dichotomy, right? We're still talking about music and we're still talking about performing music in both situations. Why is one situation just sort of naturally have this social aspect to it and like this byproduct, which is people want to just hang out and enjoy this, whereas other ones, the other aspect is more like almost a responsibility. I have to go watch my kid in this piano recital and I'll be polite and watch the other kids. What do you think that is?
Well, I think a lot of it there's a couple things. Technology has come a long way since you and I were in piano lessons.
Okay.
I did the same thing, recitals, and I was good at it. And 4 years later, 6th or 7th grade or something, all that teacher, and she could tell I was just like, I told her, I was like, I don't want to keep doing this. She's like, okay, go to the sheet music store and pick something out you want to do. And I wasn't super into music yet. I grew up listening to my dad's tapes and stuff, Michael Jackson and all sorts of stuff. So I loved music. All that teacher would have had to do is turn me on to Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder. I probably would have not quit. So access is different. So now kids are seeing like little Asian kids playing cello with a symphony at 4 years old on a YouTube video. And they're like, what is that? You know what I mean? How is that a thing? But they're seeing that there's more out there. And then when they get to the shows and the kid starts to get traction in a performance academy of some sort, now it's starting to get exciting, especially if the parents could peek in before the show and see a rehearsal or something and just see and like, oh man. So they're sipping the Kool-Aid at that point. The parents are. The kids by less than 3 or 4, they're like all the way in. Usually, unless they're not, and that's to be decided. Sure. The kids, some kids aren't going to be there. Then we get to the show. And at that point, you have at our shows, 400 to 500 people are friends and family or whatever. And they're all there going, okay, some of them may have never seen it before. Some parents are on their 4th concert. And so you have these layers, you have this village, and a village helps people. They help each other. And so when they're chatting or standing around, they might know each other. They might be at your school because the older brother of a sibling or something goes to your school for the last 4 years, and now little Johnny's 9 and he's there now. And so at the show, now they're talking. They're like, "Oh, is this his first show?" And all of a sudden the layers of history between all of the village people are now bonding over what you're talking about, which is that music. But the kids can see the progression, the layers.
Yeah.
And now they just want to get better. They see goals. And the parents are there. One advanced kid's parents is talking to the 101 kids' parents.
Exactly.
And now they have this common thread that they're all enjoying together. And I think that is what starts. Now you're cooking with gas. If you can get to that, even you don't need a school with 200 people to do it. All you need is play at a pub from noon to 4 and have 22 kids play, and the parents are there, and you have created something for the community that wasn't there before. That is so positive.
Yeah. Music lessons as team sports. That's one of the phrases I use a lot, right? It's like team sports for kids who don't like sports. Right? Team sports for kids who like music. That's one of the phrases I use a lot.
My off-colored version of that is it's the island of misfit toys. And that's not the case. We have a lot of sports kids too, but a lot of our kids, they didn't fit anywhere in their lives until they got to Los Rios.
Exactly. Right. And then, and I'm not harping on the traditional private lessons. You know, that's something that we do. Even though when the kids are in those private lessons, when I recognize it's one of those kids that you just mentioned who struggles to find his people, right? Maybe not into sports, but really loves music. And maybe as a result, kind of shy, doesn't want to get involved in our performance program, but is willing to do the private lessons. The challenge that I face is like, we have to get this kid in that room with those other kids. We have to, because as much as he's nervous about it, as much as he maybe doesn't feel comfortable with that idea, as soon as he gets in there and he starts talking with those other kids about music, and that's the bond, right? They immediately have that bond. They're talking about music. They're speaking the same language. His whole world opens up.
Yep.
Right? That's life-changing. And again, not harping on the private lessons, but that can't happen in that static environment. It just can't.
Right. I don't care what your facility looks like. We have one of the best, and I don't care how charismatic your teacher is. That'll buy you at the most a year tops of retention. But if they meet someone else that has anything in common with them, whether it's a Brawl Stars on the phone playing, or I don't care what it is.
Right.
And phones out in the school is a whole different podcast, by the way.
Sure.
But when they find, I remember this vividly. His name was Spencer. And we had a kiddo there that just was unbelievable on piano, did some of our biggest and best shows. I'm talking like Burn, Deep Purple at House of Blues, all the keys. Like this kid, he just wouldn't talk. So Spencer sits down, and Spencer's this lanky bass player, just lanky, great bass player, lanky. He got better and better. And just sort of awkward, great kid, but definitely awkward. Sat down, and I said, "Hey man," I go say hi to him really quick and just see what happens. And he goes up and he goes, "Hey, so do you Smash Bro?" To the kid. Smash Brothers, Nintendo. And he goes, he looks up. I mean, he was on the couch and his eyes fluttered. I was standing right there. Yeah, I play. And then they're like, oh, and they just went into this whole lingo on which characters they use, because there's like 70 characters. I'm a gamer. There's a million characters. Yeah. That was the end. That was it. And that kid, we didn't even know how good he played yet. It was his first season.
Yeah.
But guess what? He was willing to come into the group, show up to rehearsal against all of his being, you could tell.
Yeah.
And sit there. And then the miracle happened.
So we're planting seeds. It comes from, again, you said, comes from the founder, right? We're planting those seeds early. We're putting those kids on, or we're putting us on the same level. Let's say that we're saying like, okay, yeah, we're adults, but whatever. We're gonna come down to that kid's level wherever he is, and we're just gonna talk to that kid as a peer, and then we're facilitating these relationships amongst other kids in the studio. Right. So they're building friendships with other kids, and that's creating that bond. The parents are talking with the other parents. It's like that club sports thing. So we're building community there as well. Now, one of the biggest challenges when you and I were planting those seeds as kind of the guys doing everything, right? As the instructor and as the band coach and everything else. That's coming from us. We sort of inherently get how to do that. When we start hiring instructors, right? Now we've got to make sure that they are embracing that culture and they understand how to do that. So tips on that one. That's a hard one, I think. But what are some things that you do to make sure that that's happening?
We do an exercise called the Spark exercise in our staff meetings. Especially when there's a new staff member that comes in and we're all on, and it's usually it's a Zoom meeting. There'll be like 4 people with Phil at the school, and they'll be pumped in on Zoom, on Google Meet, and then there'll be like 14 squares of teachers, and we'll talk about the spark that caused us, John Kazicki, Tyler Marolf, what made us know we were never going to stop playing music.
Mm-hmm.
Something happened somewhere, someone, whatever. And I have a whole story on that made a difference, which caused the 2 guys that sparked my whole thing, built every single wall inside of all 8,000 square feet of our school. Years later, same dudes, they were construction contractors that let me in to jam with them. And they were like, Neil Schoen was like in the room with me, and I was like 12 at the base going, what is going on? And I knocked on that door, said, I got a bass for Christmas. Like, it was the funniest story across the street from my parents' house that you have ever heard. And they opened the door. They're like, what? They let me in.
Yeah.
They let me in.
Right.
So when the parents are paying this big tuition and they know the kiddo's shy, right? Because that's who we're talking about right now. We have kids coming in. Can I start tonight? I want to go on whatever tour, or like, and they're like 9 and they want to go on tour. Like, you see it all. But the shy kids, we have the teachers are the ambassadors. Mm-hmm. They know what to look for and when to bring things up. If there's a kid that doesn't even know what a quarter note is yet, we've got a little bit of work to do. Sure. How many quarters in $1? Guess how many quarter notes in a minute, and then get them clapping. And then all of a sudden, 30 minutes later, they're playing a drum beat with their feet, both hands. And they're just like, holy crap, with some hieroglyphics on a whiteboard. Keep doing that. And then we pick up a guitar and we're like, you keep doing that. Count me in. And I'm going to play now with you. We do that in our private lessons. We have rooms specifically made for that.
Yeah.
Those kids, even the shyest ones, they're getting these little victories, right? But they still don't want to go play in front of anyone else. But guess what we did? We got them to speak music with another human being.
Yeah.
In the private lesson. So now they can speak the language. It's like taking Spanish for 4 years and you're like, dude, I got A's in Spanish. And like, okay, cool. Go to Spain now. And let's go to Spain for 3 months and let's see how your Spanish is. Oh, I barely speak Spanish. I almost don't speak Spanish. Guess what? 4 weeks later, you're speaking Spanish because you're with them. So that is the foundation core of where we go. Now, meanwhile, the teachers are now like, hey, Jessica, we have this really cool thing Saturday mornings at 10. And my friend Gustavo and my friend BJ, they get together with kids your age and they play together and just learn fun songs, easy to learn songs. Do you want me to introduce you to them? That's their ambassadorship in action. So there's all the fundamentals of learning. We're also really big on rhythm and tone. If we don't get rhythm and tone down first before just random puzzle solving, I'm sorry, solving puzzles is great and all, but that's not going to keep a kid around. If they can hear that they're making notes correctly, they know. Like, again, we don't patronize the kids, right? Well, hey, great job, when they know it wasn't great.
Yeah.
Good effort. You're getting there. You're going to get there. I did the same thing. That's how you say it. You know what I mean? And so that eventually they pop over to what's called Jam 99 at our school, and they're in a room together. They see that there's other kids. Ooh, that kid's, he's already playing the drums and using crash cymbals. Like, whoa, I've only had 2 lessons. Doesn't matter. The directors let them know they belong, and they get a chance to do what they do know. So they'll swap out, and then they'll play. And there's always usually a director's playing with them, keeping that rhythm going on a guitar. Best thing about guitar, you can have 3 of them, at once, and so now the kid looks around, sees 4 different levels of kids near them. One's pretty much like him. One's like really good. Why is he even and most importantly, the level up thing, they can see that there's a little bit more to go get. So Jam 99, and this was the first semester, they used to not be able to play in shows because there's no auditions for Jam 99. We have Jam 99 for older kids on Monday, Jam 99 for younger kids on Saturday for an hour. And we told them all, and the parents, and it's funny, parents will motivate you sometimes. Listen, we just don't see the value if he's not going to play in front of people. And I don't let parents change my model unless I search and realize, is this I need to be open-minded and process what they said. And sometimes I think out loud while they're on the phone. It's hilarious. I don't know if that's the most professional way to do it because, you can 1 out of 10 times you shoot yourself in the foot, but that's learning. We fail and then we learn. Right. So what ends up happening is this semester, years later, Jam 99 got to play a few songs while the doors were opening.
Nice.
So it's kind of like our summer camps. Our summer camps are really hit or miss, man. We do 7 of them. They go 9:30 to noon, Monday through Friday, play a show on our stage at 11 at the very end. And sometimes it's amazing. And sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, that was borderline daycare. But you know what I mean? That's how we compensate. But we get kids from that. So we kind of took that. We knew there's going to be 2 teachers on stage at least while they're playing their songs. But people are just funneling in. The house music goes down. They get to play. It is part of the show. The lights are going and they play that version. And check it out. Some of them, what they ended up doing on stage was almost the audition basically to get into 101, which is the true start of the program.
Right.
And
because you do an audition.
So that's a way we decided to pivot and grow as a company recently. And 2 weeks ago, it worked.
Yeah.
And so that's to answer I don't know if that answers your question on that teacher experience.
Well, yeah, it does, because it again it centers around how you've structured the importance of that interaction, right? And it's the interaction and how students are seeing a progression amongst the community, right? Whether they're starting from the very beginning and seeing the kid who's kind of in that next step up, or they're right in the middle and they're measuring backwards and seeing the younger kids as well as the older kids. So they've got their place. And again, all centered around that idea of community and performance. Now, I firmly believe that's really key to why the rock school model is successful. And there's this recurring retention secret that I call it, right? So that I've seen with the rock schools, where retention with the students is like way longer in these rock school programs than I've seen in just your traditional private lesson programs. Right. Do you think that's the case at Los Rios also?
Yes, it's night and day. Lessons by themselves, we're getting students all the time that have started somewhere else. And then they find us somehow through Instagram ads or whatever, and there's kids playing that they relate to. And like, that kid looks about my kid's age. What the heck?
Yeah.
Why isn't my kiddo doing that? Remember, that goes back to what I said about technology and access.
Sure.
So now they come in and they see that's possible.
All right, I'm going to shift gears here and start to bring this home. Now, I know you had mentioned at Los Rios a couple weeks ago, you had your end of season concert. We had ours this past weekend. And these shows that we haven't, for us, since the beginning of May, those are, for me, emotionally difficult at times, because that's when we have graduating seniors.
Oh yeah.
Who are leaving our program. And the past,
John, do you know how many programs don't have graduating seniors, first of all?
Oh, I exactly.
It's brilliant that you're even saying that right now. That is a testament.
So,
but go on.
So I was almost brought to tears because we had, and I made parents cry 2 days ago at our concert, because we had a couple kids, 2 of them in particular. One of them, he's still my only guitar student that I have.
Oh.
That I've had since, so he's a graduating senior since 4th grade.
Oh my gosh.
One guitar student left, and it's him, right?
Right.
And he's about to graduate. So I've seen him and his buddy in the same group together for all these years.
Right.
I've seen him every week for private lessons. He's the last one. How many times have you been brought to tears at your concerts at the Los Rios shows? Seeing
well, it doesn't help
just the progression of these kids.
It doesn't help when the senior girls start to cry too. And then, so when those girls that I taught voice to or whatever are coming up and they can't even like look at the crowd because we're talking about them, you know what I mean? Like, this is right. Sophie was one of my best students ever. And it didn't help that she cried at the drop of a dime for happy things too. But like, when that stuff happened, yes, it was, but for the most part, it became, because over the years I started to do that a lot. That was starting to happen a lot because we grew pretty quick. And so we were getting kids at 14, right? And then all of a sudden, wait, what? You're going to UCLA? That's already happening? Like, mm-hmm. And so, yes, it was emotional, but it was like, when there's 12 seniors on stage, we've had 12 graduates.
Our biggest was a couple years ago at 7. We had 7 all at once.
And so I noticed when it was more, it was emotional, but it was less. It was almost like I couldn't compartmentalize that many at one time.
Yeah.
So I started to get the first show, John, if you go to our YouTube channel and just hit videos and go to the bottom, and it's the hay bale stage in my backyard.
Right. Yep.
I was crying the whole time. We played 19 songs and I was like, I couldn't believe it was happening. I couldn't believe it was happening. They trusted me. And then they're getting the benefit, not me.
Yeah. Right.
So that part was probably the most emotional part. The most tears I've ever had was not them leaving, because I knew we created unbelievable people. And we were at least part of creating it, not just us. Right. Their parents had a lot to do with who those special people were. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But we were their second home. Mm-hmm. So when that happens and then I know they're leaving, there's the business part that's going, oh my gosh, the group's not going to be the same next semester. Like you're already going through personnel. Like, is it boy? But we got this new guy. You know. And so you're trying to make sure that the school stays highly productive and excellent, right? So there's that little part, and then there's the part of loss, where they're not going to be a part of this anymore. But see, that's not true. It's not. They left. They're at Belmont. I've got kids coming back. We have them now teaching for us.
Right. Mm-hmm.
If it's a true culture and a true group village, they don't leave. If it's on paper, a culture or something, I don't know the best way to describe that. If it's skin deep, if it's two-dimensional or whatever, I can speak of a franchise right now that I do appreciate because they help so many kids all over the world. They don't get that. Right. When I know that they're going to college to be engineers at SLO, San Luis Obispo or whatever, first of all, it's hilarious because some of them are playing in like the most popular band at the college. You know what I mean? Like they're still going. But right. I know for a fact that their team lead at that engineering firm or wherever they go is going to have a person that they can trust and that will do what they're supposed to do for others. Mm-hmm. So when they leave, it's emotional, but I feel like I did something right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Tyler, you're an inspiration, man. I tell you, again, from the early days, just hearing you talk about how you created the culture at Los Rios, it made me think about what I was doing and how to put the pieces together. Something that was more instinctual rather than figuring out how to make that a plan. Like you were saying in the beginning, right? You say, what did I do that was right? Rather than just saying like, okay, here's what I'm doing. If I'm going to build this thing that's bigger than me, right? How am I going to allow that to spread? So, Tyler Marolf, always a pleasure, my friend. I appreciate it. And we're going to wrap this one up. Thank you.
Perfect.
A huge thank you again to Tyler Marolf for joining me. If you're doing any sort of rock band program or you're focused on building a strong culture, Tyler's school, Los Rios Rock School, is a great resource for ideas. Go steal some of his. Topic suggestions or questions, hey, shoot us an email. info@rockschoolproprietor.com is where you can do that. We'd love to hear from you. The website has some free resources over at rockschoolproprietor.com. We'd love for you to utilize those as well. On social, I'm at rock.school.proprietor on Instagram and John Kazicki on both Blue Sky and LinkedIn. Ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify are always appreciated. If you enjoyed the show and gained insight from our conversation, then we count that as a win. All we ask in return is that you pay it forward, and please share the show with someone you think needs to hear it.
Here, don't hit stop yet. I'll show you something.
Okay.
So you have to have the originals. There's the first advanced group from the hay bale stage.
Yeah.
There's the younger kids that also played.
Mm-hmm.
That's year one. And then there's the marketing.
Okay. All right. So now I'm going to have you hold on for a second.
Okay, go.
Student number one,
I love it.
There's me. There's Olivia, student number one, not even at Michigan Rock School. That was my first music school when I lived in North Carolina. Student number one, Olivia. She's married now, right?
Right, right. Crazy, right?
An adult, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yep. So right here, there's student number one. That's Mary LeBlanc. After USC Thornton, after Masters at Juilliard, last year she became the presidential's own Marine Corps percussionist for the president. So she's a captain in the Marine Corps now, which Mary was the quietest little. I would have never guessed that she would have, when they offered it to her, that she would have taken it. You just can't know what's exactly going to happen. All you can do is every day do the best you can with those standards, and just give them love, and amazing things happen. Another thing too is I have a pretty rough past, so. My thing, it's not on the website. Like, hey, I built this school so your kids don't have a rough past like I did. But they're so busy, and they had the friends I didn't have and the people listening to me that I didn't have, that 99% of our kids don't even try substances before they're gone. Mm-hmm. And that is this underlying success meter that I have, that these kids have a chance to grow up, their glands develop, their hormones develop, and everything before they start doing weird decisions that could affect their lives negatively forever. So that's a little side note that I'm also very proud of. And these were the first ones. So, John, thanks for sharing that
congrats.
first student with me, man.
This
That's awesome.
This is the first time on our podcast where we've had the like post-credit scenes.
Oh, cool. Awesome. B-roll. You got to have some B-roll.
Yeah.
Shoot.
Yeah.
Well, too bad they didn't hear the whole first 30-minute conversation we had before we started. Oh, man. It's probably a good thing.
Right on. Right on. Well, again, Tyler, I appreciate it. Keep doing what you're doing, my friend.
You too, John, and thanks for having me on. You're the best. You always have been, man.
Thank you.
It's been awesome to watch what you've been doing.
Thank you, sir. Likewise.